Oh boy. Alright, well hello and welcome to another episode of B-Movie Enema the series. I'm Jeff Arbuckle. With me as always is my trusty partner, Nurse Disembody. Nurse, how's it going?
Doing great, Jeff. How's it going with you?
You know, not too bad at all. Can you believe that we're at the end of yet another full season of the show?
No, I really can't. Where does the time go?
Time is like a predator. It's stalking you. Oh, you can try and outrun it with doctors, medicines, new technologies, but in the end, time is going to hunt you down and make the kill.
Okay.
Anyway, this has been a peculiar year, huh? I mean, we've faced women in prison, zombies, snakes.
Correction! Satan snakes.
Satan snakes, an incubus, an alien private eye, another alien, a Drainiac, a demon, a Puma man, our fears, moonshiners, international intrigue, a Satan lady, bee-girls, a promiscuous duck, and Vincent Price.
It's been a busy year.
It sure has been. So we wrap things up with
What?
I feel like I should have the movie over here. Do you have it?
No, I don't. It's probably over there somewhere.
Huh, well, that's odd.
I believe you're looking for this, Jeffrey.
God, Dick, what are you doing here?
You told me to bring a movie the last time we spoke.
Ah, shit, I did, didn't I?
Yes. Yes, you did, Jeffrey.
Alright, so what you got there?
Well, back in film school, I do believe you told me that Stanley Kubrick was your favorite director. Is that still the case?
Well, I mean, he is no Brett Piper, but, yeah, he's still my favorite director.
Excellent. Well, then here is a film we can watch this week. The master's first film, 1953's Fear and Desire.
Well, how about that?
How about that indeed?
So, Fear and Desire is the first film by then Look magazine photographer Stanley Kubrick. This movie got a decent amount of praise from critics at the time. Famed writer and critic James Agee praised the film heavily. Film professor Mark Van Doren wrote to Kubrick and told him how iconic the movie would be, and one scene in particular, featuring a girl bound to a tree that we will see later, is what Van Doren specifically was talking about. Now, he felt that Stanley Kubrick would be a name people would seek out to find high talent and watch great movies. However, well, the film was a flop.
Yes. While still being very well received, people who know a thing or two about film, the movie did fail. What is more is that the entire distribution of the film would become a problem. The film was distributed by Joseph Burstyn. Burstyn died shortly after the film was released.
Yeah, and this led to the disappearance of the film for many years. Burstyn's company went out of business. Kubrick obtained the original negative and supposedly destroyed it. He wanted to do the same for every single print of the film once it left distribution, but he apparently didn't get them all.
No, some did survive in private collections.
Yeah, that's right. It would largely remain unseen and unknown for 40 years. Finally, at 1993's Telluride Film Festival, the film got a retrospective screening. One more year later, the nonprofit art revival theater in Manhattan, known as the Film Forum, planned to screen this with his second film, Killer's Kiss. The good news was that Fear and Desire, obviously without distribution considering every print was nearly destroyed, was in the public domain.
That did not stop Kubrick from attempting to prevent anyone from watching the movie, however.
That's correct. Using his friends over at Warner Brothers, who distributed his film since 1971's A Clockwork Orange, he sent a letter attempting to disown the film and downplay as much interest as he could. However, Despite there being a pretty messed up bootleg version floating around there for decades, and the only decent print that was still with the Kubrick estate, it seemed as though this movie would never really get wide distribution.
Until a Puerto Rican film lab discovered another negative in 2010.
Yeah, and remastering that negative led to the film being shown on Turner Classic Movies in December of 2011, and Kino Video releasing this beautiful remaster on DVD and Blu-ray 1 year later.
I actually have quite a surprise for you, Jeffrey.
Oh, is that so?
Yes, indeed. Not only do I have Kubrick's first feature film, I also brought along his first 2 short films. From 1951, I believe, Day of the Fight and Flying Padre.
Well, hot damn. I mean, we have ourselves a triple feature of Stanley Kubrick. Nurse, what do you think of that?
What's that? Something about Stanley Kubrick? Cool. Sure. Let's do this.
Sweet. Well, all right. Folks, we're going to do something slightly different for this episode. Normally, we have 4 segments and break into the movie 2 times and then wrap things up after the movie. However, considering we're playing a little more than 20 minutes of shorts before a movie that is already less than an hour long anyway, we're only going to have 3 segments. Now, we'll come back later on in the movie and discuss Stanley Kubrick in detail, but we'll stick with the shorts and the movie a little longer before we cut in. So we'll see you back here in a bit, but stay tuned for Stanley Kubrick's first 3 films, the shorts Day of the Fight and Flying Padre, and the once lost Fear and Desire.
Look at the 2 of you over there, just being all buddy-buddy and about to talk about Stanley Kubrick.
Why, yes we are.
Aw, how sweet. You 2 look cute over there being so friendly.
Let's not get too carried away there, Nurse.
There's no time like the present to begin this discussion.
No, I suppose there isn't.
After you, Jeffrey.
Very well then. Stanley Kubrick was born in July of 1928. His father was of Romanian, Polish, Jewish descent, and his mother was the daughter of Austrian Jewish immigrants. Now, interestingly, his great-grandfather, Hersch Kubrick, came to the United States in his late 40s, but not with the rest of his family. No, he went to America to pursue a new life with a younger woman, leaving his wife and Stanley's grandfather, Elias, behind in Europe. Later, Elias came to America and would raise a family here that included Stanley's father, Jacob. Now, young Stanley led a somewhat unspectacular life as a child. He attended public school, but despite being discovered to have a much higher than average IQ, he had very poor attendance and only managed a D+ average. He was interested in photography and served as the school newspaper's photographer. More on that in just a moment.
While Stanley Kubrick's parents were married in a traditional Jewish ceremony, young Master Stanley was raised in a fairly non-religious upbringing. This would ultimately serve to give him an atheistic view of the greater world and universe around him.
Yeah, and I might even go so far as to say those atheistic or agnostic views he had in his life certainly carried over to his films and perhaps his whole philosophy. He liked the idea that a movie could subconsciously give the viewer its meaning and emotional impact. Kubrick wasn't interested in giving a sermon to have the audience follow. He'll present the facts of the story, and you are there to judge for yourself what you think those facts presented to you are.
Of course, there are also the usual introspection that characters would have, and that would also reveal the duality that resides in each character, as well as each one of us.
Yeah, I mentioned his stint as a school paper photographer. I should also mention that Kubrick graduated from high school at the age of 16. And I also mentioned that he had poor attendance. Now, he would skip school and go see double feature matinees at the local theater. It's like Kubrick and I were the same person, as I also skipped classes often to go see a movie instead.
Oh yes, you certainly did, Jeffrey.
But I never did miss film class.
You certainly did not. Stanley Kubrick would not attend college. His poor grades and the sudden influx of college registrations and attendance from those who would return from World War II made higher education an impossibility. Instead, he took an internship at Look magazine.
Yeah, and it didn't take long before his natural ability to tell a story through his photographs got noticed. Now still, people who would know him, or at least knew him at the time, felt that he lacked almost any personality to be a successful film director. He lacked confidence and was incredibly introverted.
But his work for Look did send him more or less around the world. He went to Portugal and did a photo shoot for a travel story for the magazine. He was sent to Florida to cover the Bonham and Bailey's circus, but he took great love in photographing boxing matches.
Yeah, you got that right. His first match that he shot was called Prize Fighter. That was published in 1949 and followed not just the match itself, but the before and after of the match. One of the combatants is someone we might actually know, Walter Cartier.
Ah yes, the young fellow in the first short film we saw, Day of the Fight. A couple of years later, Kubrick would begin making short films like Day of the Fight and Flying Padre. This allowed him to raise the funds to make his first feature, the one we are currently watching, Fear and Desire.
Yeah, unfortunately this movie wouldn't really go over all that well. As mentioned previously, the distributor died and Kubrick desperately wanted to destroy the remaining prints of the movie.
Without a hit to really show off his talents and ability, he could not make his next movie Killer's Kiss without taking some for-hire work. He was hired to the Seafarers International Union to make his first color film, The Seafarers. The Seafarers would start a tradition in Kubrick films, the use of a dolly track to run the camera along.
With The Seafarers, Kubrick had the money and ability to make his next feature film, Killer's Kiss. While that was not much longer than this film's scant 60-minute runtime, it did return to Kubrick's love of boxing.
But even then, Killer's Kiss was not exceptionally well received. It did not gross much more than its $75,000 budget. While praised for Kubrick's direction and camera work, many felt the acting was subpar.
But that said, Martin Scorsese did mention Killer's Kiss as an inspiration for some of the techniques used in Raging Bull.
Another not-so-great box office performance followed Kubrick's next film, The Killing, about a robbery of a racetrack gone wrong. In fact, this was a reportedly massive box office failure for the time. It is said the film lost $130,000.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's necessarily the fault of the movie. The Killing did get good reviews, but it had not so great distribution.
The next film, Paths of Glory, would become a marginal success.
Yeah, and what's more, it made Kubrick a little more of a controversial person. In Europe, the anti-war sentiment of the film would raise ire, but that mostly went over much more positively here in the States. Some governments even banned the film in Europe. Now, you'd think that after two devastating wars in the 40 previous years, people in Europe would agree that war is bad, but what do I know?
It also gave Kubrick access to Kirk Douglas.
Boy howdy it did. Paths of Glory proved that Kubrick was a director of ideas and ability. He did attempt some other work during this time, but ultimately nothing with his name on it would be seen until he got a phone call from Douglas asking him to direct Spartacus.
While Spartacus was a major success and made Kubrick a major director, not all was perfect behind the scenes. Douglas and Kubrick clashed over the script. The production was troubled in another way as Kubrick found himself lacking the creative control he desired. However, the success of the film, bringing in nearly $150 million and becoming an awards darling, proved to Kubrick one thing.
Yeah, if a movie could be that troubled in production and still extremely successful, there was nothing that would stop him.
Yes, the success of Spartacus opened up the 60s for Kubrick, now an accomplished and sought-after director. He would score massive hits one after another. Lolita, Dr. Strangelove, and 2001 A Space Odyssey would all be extremely well received.
Yeah, yet Dr. Strangelove was often derided by those who felt the satire about the defense apparatus employed by the United States was just a sick, juvenile joke.
There is no mistaking, though, the power of 2001 A Space Odyssey.
Oh my yes, considered to be the greatest science fiction film ever made, 2001 would challenge viewers and not simply spoon-feed the audience a specific theme or concept.
This goes back to that concept that Kubrick would rather let his films permeate through the viewer's subconscious so they can draw their own conclusions and themes.
After 2001, Kubrick would only make 5 more films in his life. These films would all explore different types of genres and concepts, ranging from the nihilistic science fiction behind A Clockwork Orange, to the period drama of Barry Lyndon, to the supernatural horror of The Shining, to the Vietnam War depicted in Full Metal Jacket, to the eerie underbelly of desire and potential unfaithfulness in Eyes Wide Shut. A Clockwork Orange is my personal favorite film in Kubrick's filmography. The incredible use of the dichotomy of a future that is lush and vibrant while still seeing others live in very dirty and poorly cared for buildings and parts of town. The use of violence isn't just exploitation. It makes the point about the Malcolm McDowell character being both a victimizer and victim. Barry Lyndon's film is about as gorgeous of a movie you'll ever see. The art direction by Ken Adam and Roy Walker is stunning. The cinematography of John Alcott is breathtaking. The movie, despite being sort of known for its slowness, is an exhilarating sight for the eyes. Now, I'm not sure what more there is to say about The Shining that hasn't already been said, but it's the Kubrick movie that I watch the most due to just how great the movie is, plus the phenomenal performances of my favorite actor, Jack Nicholson, as well as Shelley Duvall. Now, many would consider Full Metal Jacket as the greatest, as one of the greatest, at least, Vietnam War movies ever made. It's one that I have watched probably the least because I don't really like watching war movies too often. But I remember how excited I was to go see Eyes Wide Shut and how totally engrossed I was on this bizarre odyssey of sorts the Tom Cruise character went through on his way to a secret sex society that gets downright scary for him. I personally love every single one of Kubrick's movies.
Stanley Kubrick died just 6 days after screening the final cut of Eyes Wide Shut to friends and members of the production crew. The film would be released 3 months later. It is without a doubt that Stanley Kubrick's influence has been felt on film ever since. He is routinely mentioned as one of the greatest film directors in the history of film.
He'd also be considered one of the biggest influences of modern-day directors. It almost seems like everyone lists Kubrick as an inspiration. I'm not kidding. They're the ones you'd expect, like Quentin Tarantino, David Lynch, Brian De Palma, Michael Mann, and the Coen brothers. But then there are those that you would be surprised to hear listed, like Trey Parker and Matt Stone, Roland Emmerich, Kevin Smith, and Seth MacFarlane. While some of those names might make you snicker a bit, it's very difficult to say that Kubrick, particularly Kubrick in the age of films in color, didn't advance the medium to the point that almost everyone would like to film that perfect shot loaded with color and spectacle. All right. Whew. That was a lot.
Yes.
I think we should get back to the movie. Nurse, what do you think? Will that poor peasant girl be able to get back to her village unharmed?
I sure hope so.
Well, I think we're going to find out very soon. So let's get into the rest of Fear and Desire, and we will bring this season in for a landing.
Well, that didn't take long for Sydney to go completely nuts while watching the girl, huh?
Nope. Well, Dick, I will say that it was very nice of you to bring Fear and Desire. That was quite a pleasure.
Well, it was indeed my pleasure. Jeffrey C., I believe you still have the makings to be an excellent highbrow film critic.
Nah, I don't see it like that.
No?
No.
Well, never deny what you truly are. Jeffrey, I can see you are leading accredited classes on film analysis at an institute of higher education semester after semester.
Yeah, well, you see, I kind of like what I do here. Besides, I don't need to be telling nobody about, what to think about a movie or an actor or a technique. And besides, I don't really think that you taught me anything that I didn't already know about me or movies or anything.
Didn't I?
That son of a bitch just disappeared, didn't he?
He did. He really did.
Huh, okay, well, that was weird. Okay, so, let's talk a little bit more about Fear and Desire before we close everything out here. The first thing that I like is that it's clear that this movie is having a war that at least looks like World War II. However, it is not. There is no distinction that states who these people are, what countries they are from, and who they're fighting. That said, you do have guys named Mac and Sidney and Fletcher, and the other guys are blonde and have uniforms that look a little German, at least if you ask me. The girl is also very clearly a European-style villager. She's dressed almost like a peasant from some nebulous time in the past that would almost seem to be much earlier than World War II. It's also kind of implied that the opposite army guys, as well as the girl being blonde-haired and blue-eyed and so forth. So my point is that the illusion is there that this is World War II, but no specific reference is made. That also means that this is not about a specific war or a particular battle. Instead, it's about the people who fight war and what they go through.
Like I said, Sidney's behavior with the girl started kind of innocently and then gradually got crazier and creepier as he kept talking to her.
Oh, that was an amazing series of scenes. I want to talk about those two actors in particular because one is not, I wouldn't say he's really best known as an actor, and the other one is one of the most recognizable and often inspires parodies and Halloween costumes when it comes to early 60s era monsters in movies. So let's start with Private Sidney. He's played by Paul Mazursky. Now Mazursky was 4 times as many credits for acting than he does what I think he's probably much more well thought of, and that's as a writer and director. Mazursky came into his own as a director with 1969's Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. From there, he soon would garner multiple Academy Award nominations for writing that film, as well as Harry and Tano, An Unmarried Woman, and Enemies, A Love Story. A 5th nomination came for producing the Best Picture nominee, An Unmarried Woman. Mazursky only sets his films in either New York City or Los Angeles. It's said that his fascination and infatuation with LA was quite sincere. He never came off as being hip to the LA scene, as the Los Angeles Times once put it, but that he really, truly loved the perceived insanity of that city. He's not just a fan of the city, but he's a fanatic. We also have Virginia Leith.
She looks familiar, especially from the neck up.
As she should. Virginia Leith was not a huge star, but she did have some decent credits in the 50s as a contracted player at 20th Century Fox. She starred opposite Robert Wagner and Joanne Woodward in the 1956 film A Kiss Before Dying. That same year, Leith dated Marlon Brando, and the year before she was involved with Jeffrey Hunter, the actor who played Captain Pike in the original Star Trek pilot episode The Cage. Now, she did some TV shows like One Step Beyond, Beretta, Starsky and Hutch, and Barnaby Jones, but her final credited feature film performance was as Jan Compton, or Jan in the Pan, in the 1962 classic The Brain That Wouldn't Die.
That's why I recognized her.
Indeed, this is one of the more recognizable B-movie monster flicks of the early 60s. It was featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000 as the very first movie that new host Mike Nelson would watch with the bots. It's a movie that I've seriously considered putting onto this show. Note to self, put that movie on this show. But it's had a recent satirical remake that I'd positively love to see. It's had a model kit of it. It's inspired Halloween costumes for chicks who are super cool and dig the classics. She's B-movie monster famous is what I'm getting at.
I wonder if I will ever be B-movie monster famous.
I mean, you're not a monster.
Are you sure about that? Yeah. Think about that for a little bit.
Okie dokie. Care to give your final thoughts and rating for Stanley Kubrick's Fear and Desire?
Sure thing. I like what's going on in this movie. It's got a lot of pretty good things to showcase. It's efficient with mostly everything being kept to this small patch of lightly forested area. It's only got a few people in it, with a couple even having multiple speaking parts. I just wish it was a little bit longer. Again, I like the actors in the movie. These young actors are all playing mature parts and pulling it off pretty well despite only being in their 20s. The scene with Sidney trying to entertain and woo the girl while she was tied to a tree was really intense and both kind of funny and really sad. It's pretty clear that Private Sidney lost his marbles having to kill that guy inside the little cabin where they got some extra guns and stuff. It just goes by so fast. If it was a little bit longer, I could see this rise up the poop chart even higher, but for what it is, I give Fear and Desire a score of 3 poops out of 5.
Now, I really do see a lot of what you'll eventually recognize in other Kubrick films. These guys struggle with the war itself. Some characters waver between being level-headed or calm to being something that we might need to fear or keep an eye on because they may just end up committing war crimes. It's a movie that lets us decide if these guys are good or if they are tainted by the war that they're fighting. These guys, who we're also supposed to think are the Germans and therefore maybe the bad guys, are themselves weary of war. The protagonists are kind of bloodthirsty, if I'm being honest. It's a neat little look inside how war can indeed change people and make them question their own morals or their patriotism. This is a pretty decent movie, but alas.
Things have to come to an end, huh?
Yes, indeed. Season 3 comes to a close. But hey, guess what, nurse?
What?
We're not going to be gone for too long.
Yay!
Join us in just about 3 or 4 weeks for our Halloween episode.
What kinds of ghosts or goblins or ghouls do we have in store for that?
Oh, I think we'll have trick or treats in store for everyone.
Ooh, spooky.
Now, that Halloween episode will kick off an abbreviated 6-episode season 4, where 3 episodes for October, November, and December will be followed by 3 more episodes in February, which is also going to be our 50th episode, then again in March and April. After that, we'll be taking a year hiatus and we'll return with big plans for 2024.
I'm looking forward to both what we will be showing over the next 6 months and our vacation.
Me too, but you know what?
What's that?
Considering that you can still read articles every Friday morning at bmovieenema.com and you can check out past episodes on YouTube, Vimeo, and the website itself, you can still get all sorts of B-Movie Enema goodness.
So it's not like they'll really miss too much then, huh?
That's exactly right. So as we finish this 3rd season and get ready for that Halloween episode, I just want to thank everyone for watching these past 17 episodes, and we'll see each other very, very soon. So on behalf of Nurse Disembody, the great B-Movie Poop Shoot, and myself, I wish you all a good night.